All
Right.
right. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us for this month's episode of Family Protection Planning webinar series. We are welcoming Kylee Bandy. She is the founder of After Loss Advisors. This is a firm specializing in legacy and estate organization, as well as after loss consulting. After the death of her father in 2018, Kylee learned firsthand the daunting tasks that accompany death, namely the logistical struggles that can come alongside settling a loved one's estate. So, through her professional background in sales and leadership and project management, along with her personal experiences with death, Kylee brings a unique blend of organizational skills and empathy to her work. Tonight, she is going to tell us a little bit about her company and what she does, what is an after loss professional, what services are offered, namely after loss consulting and legacy organization, which is on the front end, why this is important to have directories before death, and how people can set up their digital legacies with so much information and so many different things we have going on, so many layers in life. This is a great thing to have. So, welcome, Kylee. Thank you for being here. We're excited to hear from you tonight.
Thank you, Nicole. Thanks for that great intro and happy to be here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I have a short deck to share, and I know that we'll have some dialogue about these things, but yeah, I'm going to go over everything you just mentioned. So let's get this pulled up here. How's that look?
It looks good. Just there you go. Yep, that's perfect.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So as Nicole mentioned, my name is Kylee Bandy. I'm the founder of After Loss Advisors, a firm that is almost 2 years in the making. And just an agenda for what we'll talk about tonight, I just would like to introduce myself a little bit further and give kind of a 30,000 foot view of the profession, because the after loss professional space is newer, at least in title and in name. There's been support in this space in many different areas, but actual after loss professionals is a growing space, but newer. So I like to make sure that people understand what it is, why the need is there if you haven't experienced a loss yourself. We'll talk a little bit about what my services are with the legacy and estate organization and after loss consulting, as Nicole mentioned. We'll talk about some of those key legacy considerations, like she said, with directories, digital legacies. And then for anyone who's joining us live or on the Zoom, we will open up for questions or dialogue and open for that along the way as well. So my story, I'm a Colorado native, born and raised in Steamboat, and have been in the Denver metro area for almost 15 years, and was really fortunate to grow up randomly in a tennis family in a ski town. So my parents owned and operated the tennis center at Steamboat. For anyone who's been there, that's the big white bubble that you see here. That's right at the base of the ski mountain. And I have a brother, and my parents, we all lived there, and really close, tight-knit family. Had a great upbringing. In 2015, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. And in 2018, he passed away subsequently from complications from cancer and from a stroke. And it was at that moment that my family was thrown into the depths of navigating loss and navigating what comes after loss, with all of the logistical challenges that come with that. And so for us, that meant not only dealing with our grief, and anyone who's been through loss understands this, you're in just this fog of my person's gone, and how do I move forward at all, let alone with the things that real life throws at us of needing to settle an estate or needing to plan a funeral or memorial. There's just a lot to do. And when we started getting into the things, we started learning, okay, there's so much to do. We need to look at transferring utilities into my mom's name. There's mortgages to consider. There's financial accounts to consider. And it felt so overwhelming to us. It took us about 18 months to settle his estate, which is just a little bit longer than the average. We'll talk about some of those statistics in a little bit. But really, when it was all said and done, my mom and I were talking, and we said, gosh, I just wish there was more support in this space. And there are great professionals already. We were really lucky. We did have a great estate attorney. We had a financial advisor and a CPA supporting us along the way. So definitely more supported than I would say probably the average person. And even then it felt overwhelming, because there's just so much that even then with those professionals falls on the family. And so that was where the idea began of, could there be someone in this space? Could I be that person to support families along the way? I've lived it personally. I have a background in project management and organizational services. So it felt like something that could be a good fit. And that was kind of the genesis of After Loss Advisors. So I did want to throw out some of my dad's legacy things here. If you go up to Steamboat, there's a court dedicated in his honor, as well as in the Denver metro area, the JCC Tennis Center is named after him. So he left a really wonderful legacy. And I think there's lots of things we can talk about in terms of the legacies that the people we work with want to leave as well. So what is an after loss professional? Again, I'm using this term that many of you maybe have never heard before. I'm a member of PALS, which is the Professionals of After Loss Services, and this is a slide pulled from them. But these are some of the ways that they describe what we do, and I really like them. So an empathetic detective, an extra pair of hands, an estate project manager, a skilled professional assistant, or an accountability partner. Some professionals in after loss services will actually serve as the executor for an estate, whereas others are serving more in a coaching capacity or more of in some of these capacities. These are the ways that After Loss Advisors, my business, serves folks. We don't serve in that fiduciary or legal capacity, but there are people who will do that if needed. And so again, people are saying, okay, I'm kind of starting to understand this. What's the difference between an estate attorney, a financial advisor, and an after loss professional? And I think this chart is a really good example of some of the things that we do that maybe other professions don't do. And so a lot of estate attorneys are helping, and again, a very necessary component of this space. We work hand in hand with these other advisors, where they maybe are the ones really starting the court process, advising on the specific legal components of an estate, because every estate is so different. Financial advisors are often helping to determine where should these assets really be going? How are we making distributions to beneficiaries? What after loss advisors are doing is gathering the documents and really that, again, that project manager, that one-on-one partner in the depths at your home, if you desire, going through this by your side throughout the whole process. So I find this chart to be helpful. And it just kind of helps me to visualize better how are after loss professionals supporting. So who are the people we support for after loss advisors? My business, we are really working more often than not with widows and widowers, adult children. Often we're working with executors or administrators who maybe did not know they were receiving the honor of the duty of being an executor, or if they didn't realize the tasks that come along with that, in addition to them dealing with their everyday lives, and sometimes the family members as well. So we work with a myriad of people, typically needing to work with someone who at least has the legal authority to make decisions for the estate when it comes to the after loss space. But again, just a good chart to kind of explain the things we do and the things that we don't do here. So why the need for additional support in this space? I'm sure anyone who's listening has started to hear things like the silver tsunami, the aging population is going to be rapidly increasing here in the next couple of years. And it's really unprecedented to see what that's going to happen. There's going to be, by 2015, an estimated 47% increase in that age group. And so outside of the fact that none of us know when we're going to die, the population is aging. And so the support needed in this space, both for legacy organization and the after loss consulting space, is growing and more necessary as we're all helping the people in our lives. In addition to the growing statistics, just the time around what it takes to settle an estate is pretty impactful. So this is a survey by empathy.com. And families have reported that it takes an average of 15 months to complete the administrative task of an estate. That can be much higher. As I mentioned, for my family, that was 18 months. It can also be shorter depending on the intensity and the complexity of the estate. But that is a really significant time chunk when you think about something. And when you think about maybe a family member or a friend stepping into the executor space, it's typically a role that we don't have training for. We maybe didn't sign up for or know that we were assigned. And we're also doing all of the other things we do in our everyday life, in addition to doing this new role. So in addition to the time length, there's also the added stress and education that comes with jumping into that role. We also can talk about the sandwich generation. So that's a really important statistic in another space we're hearing about a lot, but people who are maybe in the age range where they have young children or children under 18, and they're also caregiving for those children. In addition, they're caregiving for their parents, or maybe now they've lost a parent and they're having to deal with both generations. Maybe they're financially supporting both generations. there's just more support needed in this space. So where does after loss advisors come in specifically, and how do our services help? Again, we don't serve in a fiduciary or legal capacity to support folks, but what we do, where we do jump in, is looking at a lot of these categories. We're looking at property and real estate coordination, general task and research completion. So this might be something like, my loved one had a United mileage credit card. Can I get their mileage points? It could be something completely random and specific to the estate. If we don't know the answer, we will find it out. That's our commitment to the people we work with. A lot of times what we're doing is potentially locating and documenting accounts that might have been missing. So we work with different softwares and partners to be able to find missing financial accounts, missing IRAs. There's a lot of different resources out there, and we partner with a couple of them that are available both to the public as well as just to the professional space. Another large part of what we do is service partner coordination. So again, let's say that there's a home in the situation with the estate and it needs sale. That's when I'm contacting Nicole and saying, hey, I need some help here. I'm not a realtor. We stay in our lane, but we like to help the family to say, look, we know all of the professionals in this space that you might need to be connected with. And let's make sure that you're with somebody who's trusted, who's empathetic, and who's going to guide you through this time. So a lot of things that we do digital estate management, as Nicole mentioned, we'll kind of dive into that, but that's a big component of our lives these days, both with legacy organization and after a loss, is how do we navigate device, passwords, usernames, online accounts. There's so much of our lives that are lived digitally. This is a big component of how we help people. So I wanted to dive in next, just for anybody who's listening tonight. There's a lot that was kind of touched more heavily on the after loss side and some of those components, but if you are still kicking, if you're still around, if you are wanting to help people in your life get more organized, and this is not just for someone who's aging or who has a diagnosis, this is for all of us. What are some missing steps potentially to securing your legacy? In addition to having an estate plan and to, having certain things done, what else should you be considering? So immediate needs. This is something that people often overlook. And we like to talk to folks when we're helping them on the legacy organization side about, hey, it's really important to express your final wishes. And again, I'm in my mid 30s. This is something my husband and I have talked about, because it's one of those things that when someone is gone or when something has happened, in the immediacy of that grief, the last thing someone wants to do is have to decide or find out, oh gosh, what would my person have wanted? And if we can take that burden and that responsibility off of them by saying, I actually know what they wanted, or it's written down somewhere in their estate plan or elsewhere, it can just be a big burden relief in a time that's already very burdensome. And so this can look like things like funeral home preference, burial preference. If you're listening in from Colorado, there are actually 5 legal options for how you can dispose of a body in Colorado. I'll list them quickly because I think people can be interested. And so that is what we know. I say traditional burial in the sense that it's the one that's most well known. That's casket burial, typically, the embalming in any casket. There's also fire cremation or flame cremation. There's alkaline hydrolysis, which is also known as water cremation. There is, and gosh, now that I said I'm going to say all 5. There is body composting. And so you can choose to have your body composted. And then there's natural burial. And what that looks like is similar to an in-ground burial with a casket, just without the casket, often a cotton shroud or something like that. And so 5 options in Colorado. If you're here and you didn't know that, now you know. And every state is different. So if you're listening in from somewhere else, be sure to look up what your options might be. Additionally, ceremony and celebration wishes. Some people might feel like while they're living, hey, when something happens to me, I really don't want a big shebang. I just want the family to do something, and maybe you go on a trip, or maybe, you can share those wishes about what you would want to happen. And any other personal requests, maybe there's readings or songs that you might like. These are things that, again, it takes just a moment to quickly jot these down or share them with someone, but can make a big difference in that time of grief. Care instructions. So when we're working with folks in the legacy organization space, this is something that we always talk about because, again, if something happens to us in an untimely manner, we want to make sure that the other people that we might be responsible for, or the animals we might be responsible for, are well taken care of. And that can look like, again, pets, children, dependents, and even for yourself, if you're still living, but maybe you're incapacitated, there's a lot of different details that need to be considered. So when we're working with folks in this space, we're helping to outline these, write them down, make sure that they're in a place that is not just locatable if something happens to us, but maybe we're sharing with someone important in our life. Hey, if you were to ever need this, it's in the safe in the garage, or it's in my filing cabinet in the office, or wherever it might be. So with pets, we talk about what are their care details, what's their vet information. Is there someone who we've already talked to about being a caregiver for these pets, or that we would like to be caregivers if something happens to us? And what financial arrangements are there? Pets are not cheap. We have two dogs, and they have both had their share of ailments that have cost us a pretty penny. So, there's things like pet trusts out there that the legal world can support you in creating, or you can, in your will, leave a certain amount. There's lots of different options that I won't dive into, but an attorney can help kind of outline what those might look like. Children independence, again, a little bit more seriousness to this. Not that pets aren't serious. Like I said, I have two dogs. I love them desperately. But with my kids, it's different. I really want to make sure that with my kids that I have this guardian information outlined and legally drafted. So if something happens to us, my brother and his wife are taking care of our kids. And they know that. They know where the documents are. They have copies of the documents. So again, if something happened, they would be able to get that court-ordered authority as needed to take over guardianship. I would also, when we work with folks, we write down what are their medical and educational needs, depending on where they're at, if they can speak for themselves or not. Daily routines and preferences. We talked about some of those legal documents, but just a lot of things to consider when it comes to children, and then other dependents as well. Maybe this is an adult child, or maybe you are a custodian for an adult parent or another elderly person. These are important things to consider writing down in the event that something happens to us. And then again, for yourself, as I mentioned, we're talking about where are your healthcare directives, your powers of attorney, personal preferences that you might have. Let's say, in my dad's instance, he had a stroke and was unable to communicate for himself. But would it have been important to him to have gone outside, feel the grass between his toes? These are things that we can maybe share with someone ahead of time of like, hey, if I can't speak for myself, but I'm still here, please prioritize these things. Please don't put on Judge Judy, or, it can be as simple of the things you do want or the things that you don't want, but just important things to have documented. These are all kind of like really easy to put together insurance policies, if you will, for ourselves that don't cost anything other than our time to put them together. So that kind of dives in. We talked a little bit about creating these things, drafting these things, whether it's online or a document saved somewhere, but creating directories in general is so important. And I talk to people, I say, if we can provide the treasure map to our lives, we're minimizing stress for other people. If something happened to me yesterday, what would the people in my life need to know today that they don't know? And often the answer to that question is everything or most things. Where are my password? Where are all of these things that you see listed here in these bullet points? And I won't read all of them aloud, but let's create these directories for how and where to access these things as a solution to guide people when we are not there to be able to do so. Where can people find these things? How do they access them? There are certain things, especially in the digital space, that we can create legacy contacts, emergency contacts. We'll dive into that a little bit, but really providing that treasure map, and it just takes time to do these things, but that's it. These are things that we know in our brains. We just need to put them out in the world somewhere else if someone else were to need to know them. Nicole, just a quick question for you. I'm sure you've worked with people where maybe this is when something has happened, if they've lost someone, or maybe not, where they don't know where the title is, or they're missing information that comes necessary to that. Is that something you've seen before?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the nice thing is we do have state records, so we can go to a title company for that kind of stuff. But still, I think it helps a lot if we don't have to go on that
Yeah.
a goose chase if they have things and they can show. I think, taking the time to really sit down and think of all the things that you have in your brain that you have stored that nobody else knows about is such a valuable thing and such a wonderful thing you can give to your loved one. So
Yeah. Yeah, good insight. Yeah, and there are things as you mentioned that there are state directories or state national registries where we can find some information. But I think to your point, if we can just make it easier on someone when they're going through it already, why not do so? But that's a great call out. Legacy information. So aside from the logistics, the finance, the legal components of our lives, there's also sentimental and ethical considerations that we might want to leave for the people in our lives. These could be family traditions, recipes, stories, our genealogy, antique items that we may, antique personal property. I worked with a family, and the matriarch of the family is an amazing cook, and she is all of her recipes live up here. And so one of the projects that we've been working on with her specifically is creating a book of these recipes where whether it's her handwritten, if she's handwriting it or we're typing it out, there's options where people can record their voices sharing about these things, whether it's a recipe or a story. But for her specifically, we're creating a recipe book, and she's hoping to gift it to her kids for Christmas this year. So that way they have the Christmas lasagna recipe. They have all of these recipes that, if something happened to her, she said they would be devastated because this is what they eat every year for Christmas and every year for Easter. And she's the only one who knows them. So I'm so excited for her. I think it's a great gift, and definitely one of those emotional components that matters that we leave these to people. Sentimental, maybe is the better word. And then our digital presence. So a lot of us don't think about our digital presence when preparing our estate. And throughout the United States, there is this RUFATA, and an attorney can better share with you about what this means to an estate. But essentially, it does allow a personal representative that's also coincided used with the same term executive to have the authority to access our digital accounts. That being said, every single digital website, Facebook, Instagram, they all have their own terms of service that separately dictate how someone can or cannot access them. So this is helpful, but not always the thing that can get us access to someone's account, just to keep that in mind. But when we are thinking about our digital presence, I like to break it down into three categories. This can be our actual digital assets. So things like a blog, online art, music we've created, business websites. There's our digital information. This is our email, bank account, subscriptions, places that maybe we have things stored, but it's not necessarily an asset. And then our device access, our cell phones, tablets, laptops. Often when I'm working with someone after a loss, so many of the answers to the things that we are missing live within these devices. And if we have access to them, it can really help solve a lot of answers, even if it's just telling us, okay, on their cell phone, they have a Chase Bank app and a Fifth Third Bank app. That makes me understand and think maybe they have accounts there if I didn't know that already. So these are really important things. And then also many accounts, I kind of mentioned that, are governed by these terms of service, but Google, Meta, Apple, these businesses do have ways that we can set up legacy contacts. So I don't have that information shared here, but if you are listening, just know Google, Meta, and Apple. Meta is the owner of Facebook, Instagram, have options for you to set up legacy and or emergency contacts that would allow someone to access your accounts after you've died. So we can share that out in our recording after the presentation as well. That is it for me. If you'd like to get in touch, my email, phone, and website are listed here. We do service folks nationally from a virtual capacity and in person in the Colorado, Denver metro area. We do free consultations with anyone who's interested in learning more or would like to work with us. And those can be scheduled here or directly on our website in the Contact Us space. But again, Nicole, I just thank you for having me, and really, really grateful. So thank you.
Absolutely. That was great. I will share this information, all this contact information on the Facebook, and we'll have it for the recording as well. So if you do want to get in touch with Kylee, you can do that. I had so many great takeaways. I think, just kind of driving home the point that like this is something that we do for our loved ones, even though it seems challenging to think about when you maybe don't think you need it yet. But it can make things so much easier. I mean, when you think about 15 to 18 months of time devoted to going through this type of paperwork, of course, working on the legal, working on the house, things like that, that can be a really long time for people that are that are trying to grieve and process, whether it's expected or unexpected. So, like anything we can do to make that process just a little bit easier, I think goes such a long way. And then, a nod to that sandwich generation that you kind of mentioned, the people that are kind of in midlife, in the thick of it, have kids, working. It's wonderful because you provide this service. Oftentimes, those folks are able to compensate for their time. This is something that is so needed, so that they can still spend time with their family, so they don't lose traction at work, and try and keep it all together for a little bit of time. I mean, 15 months, 18 months,
Yeah.
but really just having somebody else to be on your team to help guide you through it, to help know what questions to ask when you don't know what to ask.
Yeah.
Of course, with your legal team always, but I think something so special about what Kylee does is she really gets like in there at home with you and diving through some of the more personal things. So it's really cool to hear that you are helping that gal with the cookbook. I think that's really wonderful, and that's something that like a lot of people could really make that a project. That's such like a
Yeah.
wonderful gift to give people, even while you're still here. So
Yeah.
um I appreciate you so much. Thanks for being here tonight. And if anybody else has questions, feel free to put them on the Facebook, or shoot us an email or a text. We are here to help. We are here to provide as much information as possible. So thanks again, and hope everybody has a great rest of their week.
Thank you.
Bye.